Now let's bring in now my first guest, Saturday Herald Sun columnist Steve Price. Steve, welcome to the program. Look, we've seen today that former Prime Minister John Howard has entered again the debate about the voice. He's spoken about the referendum. His view on the front page of the paper today is that the voice will divide and not unite Australia. In his view, he says he thinks it'll fail and go down quite significantly.
Look, I think
if it were carried, it will create a new cockpit of conflict about how to help Indigenous people.
Yeah.
I don't think the voice is going to produce anything other than regular standoffs between what the voice is asking for and what the government of the day is willing to do, with a fair dollop of constitutional adventurism thrown into the mix.
Apologies, Steve. That was John Howard, a voice recording of his interview with The Australian. Look, he has always been tapped into Australian sentiment. Do you think his assessment that the voice is on track to fail is telling?
I do think that, and I think he's spot on. I think, again, it shows that John Howard, even at 84, still has a really good handle on Middle Australia. I mean, his great talent during his record-breaking time as Prime Minister was that he knew what the great middle part of Australia was thinking. You only have to think about his attitude on things like gun laws, illegal boat people, even John Howard's love of sport and the fact that he genuinely followed, sporting events like Test cricket and tennis showed that John Howard knew what average Australians were thinking. And I think what he's enunciated today in The Australian to Janet Albrechtsen is absolutely spot on. He is picking up what a lot of people, what a lot of commentators and what a lot of people who are listening carefully are picking up, Sharri, about the voice. And I think unless there's a massive change in the mood in this country, then John Howard again is going to be rightly proven right.
Yeah. Well, there were talks between Anthony Albanese and the New Zealand Prime Minister today, and it turned to the voice and specifically the treaty. Anthony Albanese was asked about his view on having a treaty that could follow a voice. In this formal diplomatic setting, he was somewhat more polite than when he was on air with Ben Fordham last week. Here's what he had to say.
Our histories, of course, are quite different, and the Treaty of Waitangi is, of course, New Zealand's founding document. Of all the first world nations that were former colonies, we are alone in not recognising the First Nations peoples.
Steve, it now seems that the issue of treaty is entering the voice debate and is going to become something that Anthony Albanese will be asked about again and again, given he has previously said that a voice body would be the first step and then treaty and truth-telling.
I think Anthony Albanese would have been sitting at that joint press conference today, Sharri, and the T word came up. He would have been thinking to himself, how have I let this happen? Because Chris Hipkins actually talked about treaty. Yes, he was referring to the Treaty of Waitangi, but if you look at the record in New Zealand of what's happened between relationships between Maori and non-Maori over the last 20 years and the angst that has caused average New Zealanders in a whole range of areas, and I speak on radio in New Zealand twice a week and I've been doing it for 30 years and I follow their politics and the news of that country very closely. They've had awful problems with the issue of how the Maori are treated and how non-Maori are treated, things like a health system that's separate. And so what happened here is Anthony Albanese stepped right into the middle of a debate that he really sorely would not have wanted to have. And I'm surprised that PM Hipkins wasn't worded up before they had that joint media conference and told, mate, don't mention the word treaty for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly.